Today is one of my favorite topics, but it's a little long, so it's going to take me a couple of videos to explain it. So, to start with, I want to remind you that our history, Texas, is forever linked with the history of Mexico. That's because for hundreds of years, much longer than Texas has been part of America, Texas and Mexico had the same fate. Same things that happened to Texas happened to Mexico because we were really a part of one unit. First, we were a part of just North America and we were owned by native tribes. And remember, I say that loosely because we've talked about before that the tribes didn't consider the land something that could be owned generally. Then the Spanish explorers came and they claimed Texas and Mexico together. They were one country belonging to Spain. Then remember, France accidentally claimed part of Texas when Robert La Salle got lost. And then um, Spain began building missions all over Mexico and Texas to hold its claim. And that's really all we know so far. Texas and Mexico, under Spanish rule, operated under what's called a caste system. And basically, that just means that there are different groups of people in that country that are allowed to do different kinds of things. Usually, there's someone at the top, and there's a small group of people who run everything. And then there's different groups of people who are treated differently according to whatever caste they're born in. Now, the caste system in Texas and Mexico under Spanish rule is a lot more complicated than what I'm going to explain to you today, but you're in the fourth grade, so I'm going to make it as simple as I possibly can, all right? But my hope is that when you get older, you go and investigate this more thoroughly because it is very interesting. So, first of all, the top group in Mexico, which is also Texas, were the Peninsulares. Sometimes they're called Gauchapines, but Peninsulares I think is a little bit better word for us because it helps us remember what they were. They were people who were born in Spain. And see, Spain, that's this country right here, is a peninsula, which is land that's surrounded on almost all sides by water, but it is connected to other land. They lived in large houses and they were sent from Spain to live in Mexico by the king and queen, and they were usually given like the best jobs because they were going to rule over everybody in Mexico. They were very well respected. They usually worked in the government or church. And you can tell from this picture, lived a pretty fancy lifestyle. They had lots to eat and pretty much everything they could have needed. And the next group that was lower down in the pyramid was the Creoles. Their family were from Spain, so maybe their parents were Peninsulares and they were from Spain, or their grandparents, but they themselves were born in Mexico. So they were of Spanish descent, but they were born in Mexico. They were still respected because they were Spanish, but they had to obey any of the Peninsulares' rules. They lived an easy life, but they were not as rich as the Peninsulares, and they never could be. They had to stay in their spot in the caste system. They owned large businesses and farms, but they could not advance beyond that. Now, if you think about between these two, who do you think was happier, the Peninsulares or the Creoles? If you said the Peninsulares, you were right because they were the boss. And usually, when you're the boss, you don't have much to complain about. The next group in the caste system, which was a little bit further down the pyramid, were the mestizos. The mestizos, and mestizo basically means mixed. You are of mixed race. They might have one parent that was Spanish, but the other parent was either a native or a slave. They had to work for the Creoles and Peninsulares. They might get lucky and own a small home or a small farm, but they had no say in the laws of Mexico or how they were treated. And they were often not treated very nice because of their race. Now, who do you think was happier, the Creoles or the Mestizos? If you said the Creoles, you're probably right, because the Mestizos didn't get treated very nicely, and they got bossed around even more than the Creoles. Now, the bottom of the pyramid, who got treated the worst, there were two groups, the native tribes and the slaves. Neither one were allowed basic freedom, and they were not allowed to go to school. They lived in poverty, and they had no hope of making things better. How do you think they felt about how they were treated? If you think they were unhappy, you were right. And in the next video, we'll see what happens next.